Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Erdogan. Defending Gaza and boosting defense. These were the key themes of Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's Asia tour, which took him to Malaysia, Indonesia, and Pakistan. His trip followed U.S. President Donald Trump's controversial proposal for an American takeover of Gaza that would displace Palestinians. Rallying support across Asia, Erdogan declared that Gaza belongs to Palestinians and that no one could take it from them.
Israel should end its occupation in Palestinian territories and compensate for the damages it has caused. Therefore, it is essential to establish an independent, sovereign, and geographically integrated Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital, based on the 1967 borders. Türkiye and Malaysia will continue their efforts and support for Palestine without slowing down.
In Kuala Lumpur, Erdogan and Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim reaffirmed their commitment to doubling trade and expanding cooperation in education, tourism, and space technology. In Indonesia, 13 agreements were signed, including a major defense deal for Ankara to export TB3 and Akinci drones while establishing a joint production facility. Finally, in Pakistan, Erdogan and Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif condemned any proposal to forcibly displace Palestinians from Gaza, reinforcing their united stance on the issue. For more, joining me now from Kuala Lumpur is Julia Rocknefard. She's a senior lecturer at Taylor's University. From Islamabad, Hanan Hussein, he's a senior expert at Initiate Futures. And from Ankara, Shuay Nilhan Açıkalın, she's an associate professor at Ankara Hacı Bayram Veli University and a member of the Global Indonesianist Network. Now, ladies and gentlemen, thanks. A very eventful trip. We saw some joyrides in the Turkish-made tug. We saw some defense deals, talk about trade cooperation. But I think high on the agenda was coordinating and cooperating on Gaza, especially with U.S. President Donald Trump's recent proposal that sparked some outrage and anger throughout the Muslim world. Now, Julia, what are your thoughts on the declarations made in the three very important Southeast Asian countries during Erdogan's visit?
Indeed, Gaza featured prominently in President Erdogan's speeches in all the three countries, and he started off with Malaysia, which champions the Palestinian cause just the way as Turkey does. It looks like pretty much on the President Erdogan's side, a lot of things what Turkey stands for were repeated in all the three countries, and it was echoed and supported. And in the case of Malaysia, I can say it's vehemently championed over here what Turkey stands for in the case of Palestine. So to me, it looks like the visit is more or less anchored to the Palestinian cause. It revolves around it. The parties talked a lot about the reconstruction, the post-war reconstruction in Gaza, who should take responsibility for it. Here, President Erdogan was saying that Israel should take this responsibility upon itself to help Gaza reconstruction. And Malaysia, which even among some of the countries in the world does not have any diplomatic relationship with Israel and had it pretty tense over all these years, it supports President Erdogan on this. So to me, it looks like pretty much of a trip with a political leaning, with a political purpose, despite a lot of talk also done on the trade and defense cooperation, the possibility of increase in trade. The primary purpose of this visit within this framework of Asia and EU on the part of Turkey seems to be to speak boldly on the Palestinian cause and also see what kind of ripple effect it would have not only in Southeast Asia and in South Asia, in the case of Pakistan, but also beyond in the broader Muslim world.
Erdogan definitely placed a lot of the responsibility of rebuilding, at least the financing, on Israel. I want to play a quick video of the Turkish president making a statement regarding that before I continue on to Hanan. If you can play this quick clip, I want Hanan to listen in, and then we'll continue to comment.
We appreciate Indonesia's stance on the Palestinian issue. We will continue to work with Indonesia in the reconstruction of Gaza in defending the Palestinian cause in the coming period. The total damage caused by Israel's 15-month attacks is approaching $100 billion. Let's not forget that the principle in law is that the damage should be collected from the perpetrator.
So, Hanan, Erdogan wants to see financial responsibility for the rebuilding placed on Israel. What are your thoughts?
I think that logic dictates that's the way to go because, from the occupied's point of view, the amount of damage, destruction, massacres that we've seen over this 15-month period and ongoing is because of one core aggressor. So I think Turkey kind of pointing to the direction and saying, hey, look, the onus of reconstruction, the onus of kind of managing does not fall on powers which are yet to kind of brace with the spillover effects, but actually on top of the aggressor. And I think I would view this as part of a larger narrative that Turkey has been able to champion over the months. And his recent visits to Indonesia, Malaysia, and Pakistan were a bit of a reinforcement of that momentum to say, okay, that what we're looking at is forced displacement. What we're looking at is a possible ethnic cleansing as well. So in order to move in that direction, rather than giving, I'd say, the lion's share, the benefits to the occupying force, and then by extension, kind of undermining the inalienable rights of Palestinians, it's important to focus on the economic, legal, and political responsibilities, putting them on the occupied, but also making sure that Muslim majority countries, for example, Indonesia and Malaysia, these are huge players within ASEAN, which has a lot of sway with the US as well, and occupy key positions within multilateral forums. So I think him kind of moving in that direction is a reinforcement of the fact that the onus of making up for the destruction falls on Israel, and all those forces that are backing Israel's destruction need to move beyond impunity and look at viable options that support Palestinians' causes. And I think Turkey is pointing towards the fundamental understandings, including the pre-1967 borders, is a reinforcement of another fact that any sort of adjustments to the current Palestinian cause to kind of sway the momentum towards Israel would not exactly be acceptable at all, and would actually lead to more disruptions within the region.
Shuai, when you think about the Muslim world, generally the first thought that comes into everyone's mind is the Arab world. But when you look at Malaysia, Pakistan, Indonesia, these are probably some of the most populated Muslim countries, if not the most populated Muslim countries in the world. Now, this trip, it looks like Erdogan's trying to gain some momentum here before possible Arab League summit, Organization of Islamic Cooperation summits that are likely to happen very, very soon as a response. Do you think that this momentum will help Erdogan in engaging with the Arab world ahead of maybe a possible joint statement? Do you think that joint statement will just be opposition to Donald Trump's proposal? Or do you think that the Muslim world can come together for a counter offer? Say, hey, we have a better offer, actually.
Well, thank you, Yusuf. I think the President Erdogan, this trip is strategically important when it comes to especially for the upcoming OIC meeting or the Arab League meeting, because as you mentioned that Indonesia and Malaysia and Pakistan totally seems to be most populated Muslim countries. And also they have a diplomacy understanding, especially when it comes to the conflictual areas, and the Palestine is very clear. Two-state solution, they are supported, but at the same time, through with the ASEAN and their understanding of the diplomacy seems to be more focused on against the Trump's plan and focusing on the peace as much as possible. And I think it is very important to mobilize these three countries, especially in the framework of OIC, and not only the OIC. And I think President Erdogan is really good at establishing mechanisms with the new countries regarding the Palestine issue, as we've seen in the just beginning of the war. Maybe you remember that more than 10 countries, Minister of Foreign Affairs just visited the important capitals in the world and tried to explain what is the two-state solution and why we need this. And I think the last trips also contribute the making of the new mechanism between the Türkiye, Indonesia, Malaysia, Pakistan, and maybe later some other countries will join as well. We will see its outcome in the OEC meeting and in general sense of the Palestine diplomacy.
Mm-hmm. Julia, I want to get in a little to the trade, obviously. We can talk about Gaza, the whole program, but a lot of bilateral relations also talked about. I want to talk a little about joyride diplomacy. Obviously, Erdogan rolling out the Turkish-made TOG, very, very important. test driving it with all three leaders. He's done this before in Gulf nations. He's done this before with Central Asian nations. And that's kind of you're a very close ally of Türkiye type of gift. He doesn't do that with everyone. So how important is this joyride when you see two world leaders together? They're having that little off-camera chat. You see them being very, very human, joking around with each other, probably raising awareness about the product. What are your thoughts?
Indeed, the two are big friends, or at least they are branding themselves as such. And we've observed it multiple times during the previous visits of President Erdogan as well. I think it was 2019. That was the time of his last visit, and when he attended the KL summit, where all the three nations, also Malaysia, Indonesia, and Pakistan, supported that. And they had a very cordial, very private dinner with Anwar Ibrahim, who at the moment was not a prime minister yet. So President Erdogan still put the priority on having this meeting with his friend. We also saw how, and what you're showing on the screen right now, that's how they rode the car together and how they had that another cordial chat. In 2008, Anwar Ibrahim, for a couple of days, took refuge in the Turkish embassy when there were charges against him, and he was released after the embassy was assured that the charges are not going to be pursued. So they have a lot of history, even some similarities in their personal life and career. And as I said, they present themselves as big friends, and they call each other a friend, a brother. Although, on the other hand, we also just saw President of Indonesia, Prabowo Subianto, also calling President Erdogan as such, as a friend, as a brother, which I think it's coming from also the relationship they have, but also this unity that they have over some political issues, starting with Palestine. So, of course, this helps. And in Malaysia, also culturally, there is a propensity to or desire to build better, deeper, and wider ties with Türkiye. Due to cultural proximity, history, and people look at Turkey and Turkish culture very well, very fondly. And that is something that we would expect could propel trade to the new level. However, at the same time, with the trade rising for the past years, and now it's reached over $5 billion US dollars annually, and with the parties pledging to double it in the coming years, it's not clear, rather, despite all the MOUs, that memorandums of understanding that were just signed in Kuala Lumpur, with what goods or services they are going to take it to the next level. So it looks like they reached some threshold at the moment, and probably it's going to plateau for a while maybe developing ties in other areas rather than economic. So bottom line is it definitely helps, but there are other constraints of technical economic kind.
Hanan, I want to talk a little about defense now. One big deal was the more than 60 drone deal or up to 60 drone deal that was signed in Indonesia for the Bayraktar TB3 and Akinci drones. Part of that deal was talking about joint production. So how important is this trip to increase defense cooperation, defense sales? I know that Pakistan and Turkey have a very robust defense relationship as well. And what role can Pakistan play in possible joint production also for some of the concept projects going forward?
I think it's critical. So when you start with Indonesia, look, the drone manufacturing, I think, builds on past track records. So we saw in 2023 as well, about a dozen Turkish drones were kind of procured by Indonesia as part of its military upgrades. I think the current factory being set up points towards a larger vision. So when we talked about those drones, one of them, for example, has a dual and multi-purpose utility in terms of landings and takeoff. The other one is going to also be of utility to the Indonesian Navy. So when you look at the broad purpose of engagements and the fact that defense cooperation has also been a fixture in ties with Indonesia and Malaysia, I think this this is going to be a bit of a game of sharing competitive strengths and also focusing investments in a way that brings in official channels as well as private and state-owned enterprises. So I think in Indonesia, which is the largest economy in ASEAN, there's a lot of potential to make this happen. And I think Turkish competencies in this field kind of adds to its demonstrated leverage. When we talk about Pakistan, I think so. As far as Pakistan stands right now, in terms of joint production, I think both sides are going to be looking to expand their tracks a bit more. We did see a key agreement materialize between the Turkish Ministry for Defense, as well as their Pakistani counterparts, as well as the aerospace state-owned enterprises coming in. So in terms of what kind of shape that joint production takes, I think there's going to be a bit more focus on technology sharing. This was a key part of the agreement, which was also reached in Malaysia. So, for example, when you have an established government-to-government procurement mechanism for defense, it lends that consistency and pace, which in turn can also inspire investor confidence in this space. So I think given regional dynamics, given Turkey's competences in this field and their idea to kind of broaden the ambit of Asia anew, I think the drone facility you talked about in Indonesia is a huge step going forward and can inspire many of the pathways in the near term.
So when you look at Indonesia, Malaysia, and Pakistan, they're basically smack dab in the middle of the great power competition between China and America. So when you have a country like Turkey providing defense sales to them, is that an important strategic hedge for them where they don't have to depend on either China or America for their weapons?
Definitely, Yusuf. First of all, I need to say that these three visits clearly show that the leader-to-leader diplomacy and how it's reflect to also the preference of the political choice of those countries as well. It's clear that these kind of the independence for those countries to choose the Turkish defense sector is also represent, first of all, in terms of technically, because most of the time Turkey also bringing up know-how as well as the joint cooperation that the others, also the speakers mentioned about that. Secondly, and most of the time, Turkey has been following the win-win cooperation when it comes to the defense sector within these countries. And lastly, as you mentioned, that there's a clear and the political message of those countries, we are not part of any blocs that have been basically making a global powers to struggle in that region. And I think it gives a big opportunity and advantage to these three countries to basically survive these challenging of the geopolitical crisis, both in the Middle East that reflects on the Asia Pacific, can be expected in upcoming years together with the Trump's presidency and of course the Chinese attitude at all. So in overall, basically the Turkish defense sector proposes both technical and the political independence those countries who make work with them in the long term.
Julia, Trump presidency, as Suai just mentioned, is that going to have a positive impact on bringing Turkey closer with these Southeast Asian nations? And we kind of heard from some of the comments of the leaders of the three countries positioning Erdogan as kind of the leader of the Muslim world. Is he being kind of bolstered up right now as the man that could counter Trump regarding policies that could be destructive towards the Muslim world? Is the Muslim world looking to him as the guy that can say stop to Donald Trump?
If by emboldening President Erdogan and Turkey on the part of the United States under President Trump, you mean pursuing the very same policy vis-a-vis Israel, then probably yes, because as I said at the start of our program, it seems to me that this visit is rather revolves around the political gains, political aims, and the Palestinian cause in the first place. So if the United States policy would supply Turkey and President Erdogan personally with the opportunity to ride over this coast, continue riding over this coast, and rally up other countries in different regions, not only in the Middle East, around the same coast, then yes, definitely it will be emboldening Turkey, not only in the Middle East, but beyond. Also, it seems to me that this trip is also coming right after, in terms of timing, right after the changes, the sort of regime change that we just saw in Syria, where Turkey also got an upper hand, we can say, and it looks like a continuation of this effort to ascertain primacy and the leadership in the Muslim world, not only in that part of the Muslim world that lies in the Middle East, but beyond that region, and Southeast Asia, South Asia are great destination for that, especially as we discussed earlier with this Muslim majority countries, which all of them also stand together with Turkey, and some of them are even trying to champion the Palestinian cause themselves. So it looks like an emboldening of Turkey with the power of what is happening in the Middle East and taking this cause further. So, of course, if the events in the Middle East will continue to happen, especially with regards to Gaza, we know how fragile the current ceasefire, the very first phase of it is, if it so continues, then there will be material for Turkey to work with.
Hanan, I want to expand on what I asked Julia, not just under the Trump administration, but also probably an increase in great power competition between the United States and China. Where do you see the relationship going between Turkey and these three key Southeast Asian countries? How do you see these outside events or potential events bringing them together or forming a wedge?
I think it's going to be a bit of both. So when you look at, for example, Southeast Asia and ASEAN, they are kind of sandwiched between China and the United States. The US kind of applies in a bit of a diversification of, for example, defense, security, and economy, whereas China is a top trading partner for all of them. When you bring in the maritime concerns, it kind of makes for very little space for these individual Southeast Asian countries to kind of hedge and place their bets. I think that's where Turkey's status as a power which occupies middle ground in terms of competencies all the way from tech, defense to economy. Many of the priority areas which were hammered out in their, I think, 4 to 5 year plan till 2028 kind of makes for that sense of autonomy which ASEAN prioritizes a lot. It's a bloc open to billions of people. It's a multi-trillion-dollar economy. So I think in that space, with competition between China and the US intensifying, I see ASEAN kind of looking out for more diversified partnerships, including that with Turkey. So I think it's gonna have a positive impact in kind of letting Turkey come closer to ASEAN, even building individual linkages, and on top of that, their sectoral dialogue partnership, which plays a huge role in anchoring Turkey's aspirations in that region. When we talk about Pakistan, I think one of the advantages of Pakistan's relationship with Turkey has been it has endured, regardless of China and US tensions kind of cooling down or intensifying. Part of that also has to do with strong cultural and diplomatic support. Key institutions in Pakistan are also kind of anchored in the understanding that they have to continue, key streams of cooperation with Turkey, be it spanning defense and economy. There's a lot of unfinished business as well. We've seen multi-billion-dollar plans to scale up trade kind of materialize in the past in terms of new plans, but in terms of execution, I see a bit more work kind of happening on that front. And it's important to note that the Turkey-Pakistan equation does not necessarily bring China into hostile space or deter the US, because the broader equation over that is Pakistan's level of leaning towards China or the US, which could kind of, in the near term, frustrate expectations. I think Turkey and Pakistan have been pursuing a multi-vector foreign policy when it comes to their own engagements and how they look to go forward. So yes, a positive impact in the near term as US and Chinese tensions intensify.
Swai, where do you see the Asia initiative going forward now? Obviously, these three countries are very, very important, but what about the rest of the region? What can Turkey do with other countries, for example, Vietnam, Philippines, and India, very, very important countries in that region?
Well, I think it's a great question, that it's a clear initiative and a clear willingness from the Ankara side, but it needs a more middle term and the long term policies over there. First of all, Turkey clearly developed their relations in the multilateral platforms like the ASEAN or other the regional mechanism. And I think it's a great further when it comes to the mutual relations as well as clear reflection of the multilateral relations in the personal relations too. On the other hand, I think it should be also focusing on that. Also, President Erdogan mentioned during his talking in the Indonesia focusing on the societal level and the cultural level exchange will much more foster the relations for the upcoming generation. Of course, we have a very strong historical ties with these countries, but in order to have developed much more close relations, it can be only bridged and possible by the youth connection between those countries.
Julia, Hanan, Suay, thanks for sharing your thoughts with me. Unfortunately, we're out of time. And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Yusuf Aram. If you got any comments, please share them with us on X at Straight Talk TRT. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can find more exclusive content. Until next time, take care and goodbye.